Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views here. So it's Wednesday, July 19th, 2023, and yeah, another walk in the woods here today. What time is it? It's 10 past 7 a.m. I usually get up very early, but there's a lot to talk about today. In terms of what people in the mainstream call inflation here in the UK, I want to touch upon as well one of the reasons why the dollar has been a reserve currency and why it's been such a stable, relatively stable reserve currency. And one of the reasons the people who keep promoting the dollar give for that reason, for the currency being such a widely used worldwide for its stability. And we're going to look into gold as well, of course, gold and silver. I did my video fairly early yesterday. I think gold was still around 1960 or thereabouts, and then we had a huge day for not just for gold but also silver to some extent. It didn't do as well as gold, but yeah, we're going to look into that today. And first, let's start with the UK CPI that came out. Well, not only CPI but RPI came out. And what's the RPI? Well, it's the retail price index. So that's how beautiful it is here. You can see here a bit of the grounds of the hotel. So RPI is the retail price index. That's the number that was used by the government, by the Bank of England, up until the late 90s when New Labour came to power, and they devised the CPI, and the CPI has always been about 1 to 2% lower than the RPI. So you can see why they've done that, to make the inflation look lower. But anyway, the CPI has dropped quite a bit. Not dropped, but it's rising at a lower rate, and that's the other thing we need to be careful with. The headlines today in the mainstream or in the BBC, and I don't watch the BBC, it's going to say inflation dropped. But it came out at 7.9 year on year, the CPI. And if you haven't watched yet, I did a video, back in June or July last year, and I did some more recent ones about how the Office of National Statistics has basically changed the way they calculate CPI. It's made the CPI look a lot lower in the last 25 years, and that's helped. Guess what institution? The Bank of England, because they had kept CPI was on average up 2.7 since they gained independence in 1997 up until 2020. But with the change the government did to CPI and applied to the calculation last May, now that number is down to 1.9. So magically the Bank of England kept CPI below its target of 2%, which is a complete lie, unfortunately. But the other thing is, well, RPI is more of a reflection of the average household's cost of living. That's still around 10.3. It's still above 10%. So what I've noticed this morning is that the pound has dropped versus the dollar quite a bit. And yesterday, the interesting thing about gold going up, not just in dollars, it went up versus all other major currencies. So the dollar was pretty stable. And that just goes to show you that they're all going to sink versus gold and silver. And yesterday was an encouraging day. I see that the gold price in pounds is almost back up to 15.30. And I know many of my UK viewers were getting concerned about what was going on, but I don't think we should be. And this number today, statistic, will give the Bank of England an excuse to slow down its interest rate rises, I think. But I don't think we're out of the woods yet. I think it's going to be the UK is in trouble. And why is that? Well, because we don't have, well, we do have kind of a reserve currency. I think about 4 to 5% of foreign reserves are still kept in pounds. But we can't afford to print and spend like the US does, because demand for the pound is dropping even more. And of course, that's what's happening in the US as well. So that's what's going on there. In terms of gold and silver, I spoke, I think, last week about the technicals in gold, and I said it's always tricky. But I showed you this chart here of the weekly price of gold that we'd broken out of a falling wedge, and it looked quite bullish. So it looks like we are on target to keep moving along that trajectory. It's not going to be a straight line, of course. So, and I'm talking about spot gold, not futures. Futures price is probably higher, and I don't follow that really. So the obvious next target is around 2,000 for gold. Silver, of course, 26 and 30 are the key levels, and we're still far from there, but I think we could see fireworks when we break through those. And I know there's been some reports by Ted Butler about what's going on in silver. But I, to be honest, I don't follow that too closely. I keep I look at the headline, but all I can say is that I'm going to try to keep stacking as much gold and silver as possible. I think that's the way forward. So now back to the reserve currency status for the US dollar. One of the reasons that's argued that the dollar is widely used worldwide for payments is that the rule of law and political stability in the US is a big factor. I guess you could say the US has been under the current system since 1789, when the first administration started, President Washington. You could say there were periods where that system kind of broke down during the Civil War, 1861 to 65. But even then, they kept elections going. So, that's what's argued. I know there's probably the business coup. I don't know if you heard of that. Back in 1933, there's talk that a lot of business interests wanted to depose FDR, and I think Brigadier General Smedley Butler, who wrote War is a Racket, was even asked if he wanted to get involved in it. That's why it all broke down, because he exposed him. So that's the reason given, that there's political stability. It's not like in other countries. I guess the UK has been relatively stable politically, but economically it's fallen off its perch, so to speak, with indebting itself, fighting 2 world wars, which I think unfortunately was a waste. And I'm not putting down all the people that fought in that war. I'm just saying what I think in terms of, the more I learn about the elites and what they use wars for, that's why I think like that. But so what am I trying to get here about the dollar? Well, I saw yesterday that President Trump came out and said that he's under a criminal probe from the federal government for the January 6th events in 2021. So I think whatever you might think of Trump, if you like him or not, I think it shows that if they can do that to a former president, what they're doing now, kind of what Trump called a witch hunt, can you really trust them being a foreign government or a foreign country with your money when they're doing that to a former president that's running again for office? I think the rest of the world takes note of what's going on in the U.S. I'll show you a little bit here of the hotel behind. It's a beautiful hotel. I think the house was built in the early 1900s. It looks older. But anyway, yeah, I think especially the non-Western countries that seem to be a lot of the power structure, in the mainstream media, seem to go along with this thing that Trump tried to start an insurrection and so on and so forth. But the rest of the world, like especially the BRICS countries, and they know what's going on, and I think they actually had a better relationship with President Trump, even though he might have been tough. At least he wanted to talk to them, unlike, the current occupier of the White House. He can barely do that, can he, talk? So I think that's another chink in the armor of the US dollar as a major reserve currency. Well, I think the quality of holding value, that's quickly going down the drain, of course, but the quality of being a means of settling trade, that's also now accelerating, and I think the political situation is going to make it even worse. So that's how I see it. And just to let you know, I will be publishing an interview I did with Jesse Day of the Vancouver Resource Conference website, YouTube channel. It will be coming out around 6 p.m. London today. I did that interview recently with him. You might want to watch that. That's at 1 p.m. Eastern time in the US. And right now, I guess I told you it's quite early. I am in the UK, for those of you who don't know. So yeah, it's, what time is it now? 7:25 UK time. So it's still 2:25 in the East Coast in the US. And it's not raining this morning. It rained quite a bit yesterday in the afternoon. We walked along the River Tees up in the northeast of England here in Yorkshire, and I saw an interesting bridge that was built in the 1840s for a local railway, and it's still standing. It's a beautiful bridge, and I took a photo, as you can see here, of how many bricks they used to build that bridge. And I was reading my book, The Price of Time by Edward Chancellor yesterday, after we went into the local town is called Yarm, Y-A-R-M, beautiful town up here, and we walked along the river. And when we got back to the hotel, I was reading my book, The Price of Time, and I came up to the section where they're talking about how there was a railroad speculative boom in the 1840s. And this is pretty much when that bridge was built. So yeah, Edward Chancellor talks a lot about how artificially induced or artificially low interest rates produce speculative booms and manias and then eventually crashes. I dread to think what's going to happen. I know I've spoken a lot about this, when this speculative boom really, and these massive low interest rates that we've had since 1981, I dread to think what's going to happen. I know it's reversing now, but we had especially since 2008, massive low interest rates and easy money, and it's not looking good. But that speculative boom of the 1840s, the railroad boom in the UK, at least it left some good infrastructure that's still being used today. So there you go. Just wanted to let you know about that. And with that, I'm going to wish you all a very good day, and I'll talk to you later. Take care. Bye.